Hello, my crafty friends. It's me, Lisa, the DIY Diva, and I have a bunch of brand new Christmas crafts to share with you today. So get ready to get crafty and let's make some Christmas decor. To get started, I'm going to be using these Dollar Tree candles. Now, these are flameless candles, and I like flameless candles, especially for crafts. So I have this ribbon that I got from Hobby Lobby, and what I'm going to do is take off the wired ends of it. So I literally just ripped it off, and then the remaining ribbon portion, I'm going to secure that around the candle. Now, again, I would not do this with a real candle, one that burns like with fire, but with the flameless candles and the battery operated ones, these projects are really great. So I just wrapped that ribbon around the candle and then secured it with a little bit of hot glue. And believe it or not, the hot glue actually did adhere to the candle itself. It does have a little bit of a wax feel, which made me worry about the glue sticking, but it did. And once I had that ribbon secured in place on the candle, then I came back with this ribbon, and I got this at Hobby Lobby as well. And right now all of their Christmas stuff is 50% off. And this was so pretty. I thought it would look really nice on top of that glittery ribbon. So I cut a piece off and then just secured that on top of the first ribbon that I put around the candle. And I've just removed the excess around the bottom, and I really like how this looks. So then I came back with the wired end of that first ribbon and I tied it into a bow around the center of the candle, so it will be right in the middle of the ribbons. Then I just used some hot glue to secure the bow in place. And then I wanted to dress it up a little bit. So I just wrapped the tails of the bow around a paintbrush to give it a curlicue effect. I think that's so pretty. I love those little curlicues. Then I added in another set of curlicues using some more of the wire remnant that was on the ribbon originally. Then I took some greenery, just some little pine pieces, and I just fit them in on top and around the bow itself. This will definitely give it a nice holiday feel. And then I secured a pine cone to the center, and I made 2 of them. But I wanted to have something to like elevate one of the candles, so I had this scrap piece of wood that I had stained, and then I had these table feet that I got on Amazon. So I just took some Dollar Tree wood glue and I put some of that wood glue onto each of the feet. And then because I love that instant stick, I did add a little bit of hot glue, and then I just secured each of the feet to the bottom of my wooden riser that I'm making, or it's like a little wooden table. The wood glue will make it permanent that those feet will stay on, but the hot glue will give it the instant stick, so I can actually use the piece right now if I wanted to. Now, how was that for simple? I love how these little candles turned out. I think they look so pretty, so festive, and they are going to look great for my holiday decorating this year. I love the tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree. There are so many things that you can do with them, and the wood glue as well. So what I'm going to do is take some of these tumbling tower blocks and I'm going to make little Christmas trees. Now I've seen people do this with large pieces of wood, but I wanted to see if I could do it with the tumbling tower blocks. So for this tree, I just took 3 tumbling tower blocks and glued them probably about 1/3 of the way down, and then I secured them to each other. So 3 blocks on each side will make the top of the tree. And then I took 2 blocks and glued them for the base of the tree. And I repeated this process with lots of other tumbling tower blocks, so I would have lots of trees. Next, I took this acrylic paint. This is Anita's acrylic paint, and I think it's avocado. I'm not really sure. And I painted the entire tree. I did the base, the top, the insides, the outside. All of the tumbling tower blocks got a complete coat of this acrylic paint. And once the first coat of paint was dry, I did come back and paint everything again. So all of my Christmas trees got 2 coats of paint. Next, I came back with some more pine pieces. And again, these are from Dollar Tree. And I just separated them into tiny pieces. And I just added a few of those branches to one side of the Christmas tree. I also added some wooden stars to the tops of the trees just to make it really look like Christmas. Then I took some rusty stars and I put those right into the center of the pine branches. And once again, we have a very easy craft, but I think it looks really great. And I don't think my Christmas trees look like they came from the Dollar Tree. Do you? Now, have you seen these little houses at the Dollar Tree? They are so cute for Christmas villages. They're $1.25 a piece, but I want to try something a little bit different with them. So I wanted to see if I could take the bases off of the houses, and I couldn't. They were so hard to get apart. And on one house, I was able to get the base off a little bit, but then I did have to come back with some nippers and remove the base of the houses. This was hard for me to do because I just felt like I was destroying something. But once I had the bases off, then I came back with some nutmeg acrylic paint and I painted each of the houses with a thick coat of the nutmeg paint. And once the paint had dried, then I came back with some white chalk paint and I painted the roofs. And once the roof was completely painted, then I took some iridescent glitter and I just sprinkled that over the roof and then shook off the excess. Then I came back with a 2-inch chip brush and I lightly brushed some of that white chalk paint onto the house. So I want to make this look like a gingerbread house, but I don't want to have to paint all of the little raised edges. But I found that by using this dry brushing technique, it really made the houses look like they were gingerbread. Now I'm trying to duplicate something that I saw on Pottery Barn. It's a little Christmas village with some bottle brush trees, and I thought these houses would be perfect for it. So I just carefully went around each side of the house and used just a little bit of the white chalk paint and lightly brushed it across the house. Once I had all 4 sides painted, then I did come back and add a little bit more because I did want this to look a little bit lighter. And I really love how much texture there is on these houses. It really picks up the paint very well, and it almost looks as if it is really made of gingerbread. Now at my Dollar Tree, they have two types of trays. They have a glittery tray and then the tray that I've seen lots and lots of times. But for this project, I decided to use the glittery tray. I really think this is going to work well for this project. So if you see these at your Dollar Tree, I would highly recommend you get this type of tray. So I took that white chalk paint and I painted the entire tray. Then I came back with that iridescent glitter and I just kind of poured some of that onto the tray as well. I repeated this process until the entire tray was white and glittery. Once that had dried, all I had to do was secure the houses in place and then add the bottle brush trees. Now, some of these trees did come from the Dollar Tree and some did come from Amazon. And once I had my gingerbread houses where I wanted them to be, then I just played around with the placement of each of these trees. Before committing to actually putting the trees in place permanently, I wanted to see what they would look like. And once I was happy with how the trees were going to be with my houses, then I just secured each of the trees in place onto the tray. And when I got the ones in the front, then I just spun the tray around and secured the trees to the back. I did have a few extra trees, so I wanted to add them in to my display as well. And again, I did like the placement, so I just turned the tray around so I could glue the trees where I wanted them to be when you're going to visualize it from the front. And I also added in some Dollar Tree lights. These are like fairy lights, and I think they look so pretty. This little gingerbread village, oh my gosh, I am so over the moon with how this project turned out. This was such a fun project. I would highly encourage you to give this one a try and see what you think. I think you'll be really happy with your results. Now, I had this sign that I was going to use for a different project, and it was a snowman at one time, but it's going to be a snowman once again. So I started by using some white chalk paint, and I painted the bottom portion of the sign because this is going to be the actual snowman. So 2/3 of the sign is the snowman. And it wasn't a thick coat of paint, it was just a light coat of the paint. Then I came back with some paint stir sticks, and once I had them measured off to the size that I wanted them to be, this will be the brim of the hat for the snowman, I used some Dollar Tree wood glue and I secured them together. I wasn't sure if they were going to stay exactly right, so I did use some Dollar Tree clamps, and that really helps to keep both of these pieces of wood in place where I want them to be while the glue is drying. And I did sand off the edges a little bit too, just to make sure it was nice and smooth. Then I came back with some fabric. Now this is homespun fabric, so definitely a country fabric print. And I used my Dollar Tree wood glue again because that's what I had. And once I had a lot of glue around the top portion of the Dollar Tree sign, then I smoothed down the fabric and I cut away the excess. I did leave probably about 1/4 of an inch around just to make sure it will fold over to the back of my sign. I secured those sides down with some wood glue and used the clamps again to keep the fabric secure while the glue was drying. Now I'm showing how I did this with the fabric on the sides of my snowman, but I also did this on the top. And once the brim of my snowman's hat had dried, I used some folk art wax. This is the dark wax. I painted that on the top of the brim and then all 4 sides. I did not put any on the back. Then I wiped away the excess wax and this is what it looks like. By now, the snowman's hat, or the top, the material has dried, so now I can secure the brim in place. I'm going to use my Dollar Tree wood glue again, just to secure those paint sticks to the front. And there's my snowman so far. My snowman needed a nose, so I used a large craft stick to shape a nose for my snowman. And then I used some orange paint. This is Crafter's Choice paint and it is in the color pumpkin. And I gave that little piece of wood a good coat of paint on the top as well as the sides. Now while that was drying, I did come back with some distressing ink and I used that all the way around the white portion of my snowman sign. I want to give this more of a primitive look, so I also used the distressing ink all over the white portion of my sign. And I even did it on the nose for my snowman. Next, I secured the snowman's nose in place. And then I used a paint pen to draw his eyes. Now you could use vinyl if you wanted to cut it out with your Cricut machine. But for myself, I found it was just as easy to draw the eyes. As well as the snowman's mouth. Then I did take a little bit of white paint and just give some highlights to his eyes. Now for this, I'm actually making a bow for my snowman. So I just have lots of strips of homespun fabric, different kinds of ribbon, and these are pretty much remnants. So I'm just taking strips of everything and I just used some floral wire in the center to gather everything up to be a bow. And then I secured that bow onto the top corner of the snowman's hat. And I used a tinier bow that I glued right into the center. And then I just started adding in extras. I had little paper doilies. I used those. I used craft paper, like the wired craft paper, and put some curly cues in. I added some torn up paper and a pine cone, as well as some country buttons and some cinnamon sticks too. And I wanted it to look like he had like a little tag sticking out of his bow. So I just distressed the edges of some paper and tucked them under the buttons. Next, I came back with another craft stick and I had these tags that said Merry Christmas. So I just took the craft stick, cut it down to the size. It'll be a little bit larger for like a background for the Merry Christmas. And then I used my distressing ink all the way around the edges of the craft stick. I used a little bit of hot glue to secure the Merry Christmas on top of that. And I wanted to make it look like a sign, so I used some curly Q craft paper, that wired craft ribbon paper, and I hot glued that to the back of my Merry Christmas. And I used some little remnants of paper for the back to keep those in place. And then I secured the sign to the top of my snowman's hat. And then I used some more buttons to look like the buttons were holding the sign in place. And since this is a Christmas snowman, I did want to tuck in some pine branches as well. Look at how cute that is. Oh my goodness. Now, if you would have told me that I could make something like this with a Dollar Tree sign, I don't know if I would have believed you. I don't even believe that I did this myself, but I love how this snowman turned out, and he is going to be a very special Christmas gift for a very close friend. So I hope they enjoy it as much as I enjoyed making the snowman for them. I found these at Dollar Tree and they are so cool. They're like cutout wood pieces. And I found 2 different packages and they had these really pretty pine trees. And I was trying to figure out something that I could make using just the pine trees. And I really like this wooden ring. I thought it would be really fun to do like a 3D thing with these wooden pine trees. So first I removed that bottom edge. Now that edge that's on the bottom, that is supposed to be used for the original craft. But since I'm not using the trees as they are intended, I wanted to remove those little extra wooden pieces because I don't want them to be on my finished project. And once I had that wood removed, then I just took sage green acrylic paint and I painted the pine trees with the sage green paint. Now you could do any color you wanted to, but I really like this color green. It's kind of a softer green and it may not be traditional, but I really like the look that this gives. So each of the wooden pine tree sections got a coat of the sage green acrylic paint. Next, I came in with a brown acrylic paint because I just want to paint the trunks of the trees. It doesn't matter if it's perfect, just having this color, and I believe this is burnt sienna, on each of the trunks of the trees definitely gives a little bit of a pop of color to the piece. I love finding these wood kits at Dollar Tree. If you're lucky enough to have a laser cutter, you can probably make these really easily, but I'm not too good with my laser cutter yet. I'm going to be sharing that with you in 2025. But for now, finding pieces like this at the Dollar Tree is really fun to make some original decor and craft pieces for your home. Then I came back with a little bit of a tan paint, and then I just brushed it a little bit with a fan brush. Then I used some Dollar Tree puffy paint to make the bottom of these trees have snow. It looks like big piles of snow at the base of the pine trees. Then I wanted to add a little bit of something extra like I do. So I used a little bit of burnt umber paint and some water, and using a couple of fan brushes, I just kind of splattered the paint onto the trees. I also came back with a little bit of a cream colored acrylic paint and did the same thing. Now, Dollar Tree is wonderful for finding signs like these, and these were from the fall season, but what I did was remove the hangers on the back, and then using a little sander, I removed all of the glitter that was on the front. So where it said blessed, I removed all of that glitter because I don't want that to show up in my project. And once I had the paint and the glitter removed from the front of my signs, then I came back with some tan acrylic paint. This is a folk art matte finish, and I painted both of the signs. I wanted to add a little more texture to the sign, so I came back with different shades of brown. This is kind of a golden brown. I just lightly brushed that across the signs. So I started with one shade of the golden brown, then I came back with some burnt umber, and I was trying to make a plaid pattern on the sign, and the 1.5-inch chip brush worked really well for this. And once my pine trees were dry, then I came back with some tumbling tower blocks, and I secured 2 blocks to each of the backs of the pine trees. Then I used a little bit more of the Dollar Tree wood glue, and I placed the trees onto my sign. And I just repeated the process with the other set of pine trees. Talk about instant decor. This was so easy to do, and I really don't think there is a lot of skill required to make something like this. There's so many different things that you could do, but for this time of the year, I really like the pine trees, and I think this is something that I can keep in my decorating well past Christmas and into the new year. Next, I have this Dollar Tree glass vase. I love these vases. There's so many things that you can do with them. The hardest thing of using these glasses is getting that tag off of the bottom. But once you get the tag off of the bottom, you can do a lot. And I have this folk art gold paint. This is such a pretty color. It's called Mayan Gold, and I used that on the inside of the vase. So the reason I did it on the inside and not the outside of the vase is because that glass is going to give it a really glossy finish, and I don't have to add a coat of spray paint or anything to the outside of the vase. Isn't that pretty? Look at how shiny that is. I think that is so pretty. So I want to make a little Christmas vase. I took a small piece of floral foam and secured it into the bottom of my vase. Next, I had a bunch of plastic ornaments, and I took the hangers off, and then using some bamboo skewers from the Dollar Tree, I secured the skewer to each of the ornaments. And then I just stuck the skewers down into the floral foam. Now, I think you can see all of the little holes that have been poked into the foam already. That's because it didn't seem to work out really well the first time with this project, but that's what's nice about things like this is you can do it over and over again until you get the look that you're going for. And this is a really good way to use the leftover Christmas decorations that you have to make some extra decorations for your decorating. That's what I did with this project, and it turned out so well. That was why I wanted to share it with you. This is a really fast and easy project that you can make in just a few hours, and I think it is so pretty, and I'm so glad I took the time to make it. Now, have you seen these wooden rounds at Dollar Tree? Well, I bought a couple of them. They're very thin. So I glued 2 of them together with the Dollar Tree wood glue, and then I secured them together with the clamps that I got from the Dollar Tree. I took some Dixie Belle chalk paint and I painted that onto the top of this wooden round. Now, it was a little bit dark. I wanted it to be a little bit lighter, not quite bright white. So I came back with a little bit of white and added that into the chalk paint that I already had on the wood round. And while that was drying, I used my Cricut machine to cut out a Christmas saying. I really wanted something that said North Pole, but I really wanted something for my hot cocoa bars. And I found this design on Etsy. That was before I learned about Creative Fabrica. And when you're doing signs like this, if you fold the sign in half, not really fold it, but just kind of bend it, that helps to place it a little bit easier onto a larger surface. And even though I didn't get this exactly perfect, I still really like the way that this sign looks. So first I put on the background. So the green is the larger piece. After I got that in place, then I came back with the North Pole, which was in red. And I placed that right into the center. So this sign is using 2 different colors of vinyl, and I really do like the green and the red with that cream colored background. But I did want the background to look a little bit more aged, so I came back with some distressing ink and just put that all the way around the edges of my sign. And I thought, why not? I'm going to go ahead and put some of that distressing ink all over my sign. And even though I'm not sure if I really like that distressing ink all over, I really do like the sign. What do you think? Is that a little too much distressing ink? I'm not really sure, but I do like this for my hot cocoa bar. Now, this is a very easy project. I wanted to make some Christmas trees, but I didn't have any wood cutouts or wood that I could cut out to make Christmas trees. So I used the next best thing, which I'm sure everyone has a lot of right now, and that's cardboard. Yes, cardboard makes really good patterns for projects like this, and I like cardboard because it's very easy to obtain, and it's actually really fun to work with. And there really is not a lot of skill involved in cutting out a triangle. So after I had the first triangle cut out, then I just used a pen and cut out some more triangles. Then I came back the opposite direction and I had some smaller triangles. And using some of the yarn from my craft room, I covered all of the cardboard triangles with the yarn. I want this to be more of a rustic type of decor piece because I have a lot of this rustic colored yarn. So lots of tans and lots of whites, and some of them did come from the Dollar Tree. And once I had all of the Christmas trees covered in yarn, then for a couple of the smaller white ones, I did come back with some jute twine and wrap that around the smaller trees just to give it a little bit of decoration. And all I had to do was secure the yarn down with some hot glue. Now I have this sign that I got from the Dollar Tree and I'm going to paint this white, but I only want to have to do 1 coat of paint. So I added in a little bit of plaster of Paris because that's going to give some texture to the paint and it will make it thicker. So I will only have to do 1 coat of paint on this sign, which is pretty impressive because it's white paint and I'm painting over some darker lettering that's on the sign. This is definitely one way that you can make the painting go faster. And while the paint was still wet, I came back with some iridescent glitter and I just poured that over top of the sign. Now I had this Dollar Tree, I guess it's a charger that I had painted some time ago because I want to make my Christmas trees have like a base. So I put the white sign on top of the charger and then I started securing my Christmas trees to the white part. I started with 2 of the larger triangles or Christmas trees that were covered in white yarn. And I did use a little bit of hot glue on both sides to really make sure that it's going to be sturdy and these trees are going to stay in place. Next, I came back with another of the larger trees and I secured that to the front of the sign. Then I came back with my two smaller white Christmas trees that I put the jute twine on. And using the hot glue, I secured those to either side of the brown Christmas tree. I wanted to add a little bit of lights for the holidays. So I had this LED light strand, like fairy lights from the Dollar Tree. It only took 2 AA batteries, and then I just strung the lights around my Christmas trees. And I was careful to make it so that the battery pack will be in the back of the display. Isn't that cute? I did go ahead and add another strand of the fairy lights to my Christmas tree display, and I really like how this turned out. I wasn't too sure about using the cardboard as the base, but cardboard is wonderful for crafts, and I can't wait to show you what else I've come up with using cardboard as the base for a craft. But for now, I am so happy with my Christmas tree display, and I really like how it looks in my decor. Now you can sometimes find painter sticks at Dollar Tree, but I was able to find these at Home Depot and they were really affordable, cheaper than Dollar Tree at 96 cents for 12 of them. So I took 3 of the larger painter sticks and then using some smaller craft sticks from the Dollar Tree, I used wood glue to secure the 3 painters sticks together with the craft sticks. And next I came back with some velvet yarn, and believe it or not, this did come from the Dollar Tree. And I wrapped the yarn all the way around the painter sticks. So the yarn is going to give a red velvet base, which is exactly what I wanted. I just covered the entire piece of wood with the velvet yarn. And Dollar Tree has these really nice metal signs just in time for Christmas. They have Christmas words like peace, joy, and believe. And the believe is what I want to use. So I took some more white acrylic paint that had a little bit of plaster of Paris still, and I just mixed it together. And then I painted the believe with my paint mixture. The plaster of Paris really gives a nice texture to the sign and it sticks well to the metal. Then I came back with some Dollar Tree wood glue and I secured the believe to the front of my sign. And I did want to add a bow, but I didn't have a small red bow, so I made one out of some velvet ribbon that I already had. I added dovetails to the bottom. And I secured my bow to the lower corner of my sign and added in a Dollar Tree jingle bell. And this is such a fun project. This was so easy. I cannot believe how easy all of these projects were, but I really like this believe sign. I think it looks great. My Santa in my living room. And hopefully I've inspired you to do something like this because I'm telling you, it is so easy, but so pretty. Now, every once in a while, you can find larger signs like this at the Dollar Tree. And when I find them, I snatch them up. And usually they have a sawtooth hanger on the back, which I'm not going to be using for this project. So I did go ahead and remove the hanger. Now, the one thing that this sign had was these raised flowers. So I went ahead and removed the raised flowers. Thankfully, they were very easy to remove. Then I used some Dixie Belle chalk paint and I painted the entire piece with the white chalk paint. It's not quite white. I believe this is in the color of fluff. So it does have a tiny bit of cream color to it. And I used a chip brush because that helps to give this the look that I'm going for, which is number one, some texture. And I'm going to try and see if I can make this look like birch wood. So I did a pretty heavy coat of the Dixie Belle paint. Then I came back with some black acrylic paint and a very small 1-inch chip brush. And I'm trying to remember what a birch tree looks like. I know it has some black lines, like longer lines to it. And I find that by doing this while the paint is wet, it's easier to blend the two different colors together. I did come back with a little bit more of the Dixie Belle paint because I want this to, like I said, blend together. And that is, to me, really starting to look like a birch tree pattern. But then I came back again with a little bit more of that black acrylic paint to put some more texture and different designs onto the sign. And like with any project that you're doing, if you're going to try to do something like this, don't be too hard on yourself. Sometimes it's fun just to play around and see what you come up with. No two designs are going to be identical, and getting a little bit creative and stepping out of your comfort zone can be really fun. That's how I come up with some of the best projects that I've made. Now, once my paint was dry, I did come back with some of the Tim Holtz Distressing ink to darken things up just a little bit on the sign. And not only did I do the top, but I did continue that all the way around all four sides. Next, I had some of this fabric. What is this? Homespun fabric. And I'm going to turn this sign into a Christmas present. So I want this to have more of a rustic or primitive appearance. So using the homespun fabric, I'm going to make a ribbon for my present that's going to hang on the wall. And instead of cutting the strips of material, I just ripped them. That gives a really nice rustic edge to the fabric. And then I just secured one strip of the fabric right down the center. And then I flipped over the sign and secured the ribbon to the interior portion on the back of the sign. And then I added another piece of that fabric so that it looks like it's a ribbon going around a package. And I just repeated the process of where I secured the ribbon. Next, I came back with a thicker jute twine, and I basically repeated the process of making it look like a ribbon on top of a ribbon. And then I repeated the same process again with a smaller jute twine right next to the larger twine. And here's where it gets really fun. So I had some of the faux evergreen or pine pieces and I hot glued those to the ribbon. And then I wanted to have a homespun or more of a primitive or country bow. So I just made loops with the fabric and then I secured those loops to the center of the ribbon to make it look like a bow. And to give it a little extra dimension, I had some cream colored burlap fabric that, believe it or not, I got at the Dollar Tree, and I just cut pieces of that off and hot glued those pieces in between the loops of my bow. And then I had some little paper doilies. I believe I got those at Temu. And I just kept adding extra embellishments to really make this look like a very fluffy bow. And I even came back and added a few more of the homespun fabric loops in to make it even fuller. And then I used a very rustic looking jingle bell. And then I tore a piece of paper and crinkled it up a bit, and I had this Merry Christmas tag, so I did a little bit of distressing of it around the edges, and then I secured that to the torn, tattered paper that I put underneath the jingle bell. I used a few buttons to make it look like it's holding the Merry Christmas sign in place, and then I used a little heart right down in the corner of my package. I wanted it to have a little bit more greenery, so I came back with a few more faux pine pieces and added those in along with some other greenery stems. And that is pretty much it. I think this turned out so cute. This was very easy. No skill really was needed. Even the painting, it wasn't that difficult to do. You just have to have a little faith in yourself that you can do this. And I know you can, because if I can do this, I know you can too. I'm going to be using this air dry clay by Crayola, and I'm going to be making a lot of gingerbread men. So I found these gingerbread men cookie cutters on Amazon, and they work perfect for the air dry clay. And the air dry clay works so well for making fake cookies and fake bakes and things like that. So I'm rolling out the air dry clay and I'm working on my silicone mat. And then I just take a cookie cutter and press it into the air dry clay. It comes out really easily and it actually dries really quickly. The clay doesn't break apart, it doesn't crack, and it makes really wonderful gingerbread cookies. So once all of my cookie shapes had time to dry, then I painted them with some folk art paint. Now it doesn't matter what color you want your cookies to be, but I was going for a gingerbread color, so I used different colors that would resemble gingerbread. But then I decided to darken up the cookies a little bit because they were a little too light, and I just did another coat of paint on the cookies. The paint dries really quick, so you can get on to the next step quickly, which is to apply white paint, which will look like frosting. So I'm using puff paint, and I believe this is by Tulip, but I also found some at Dollar Tree. And I love this because it literally looks like white frosting on all of my cookies. So I just piped on some frosting or some puff paint to make my gingerbread men look like they were cookies. I pretty much used the same style of gingerbread man on each of the cookies. I did change things up a little bit, like on their faces or how many lines I put on their hands or their feet, but I would say overall each of the cookies looked very similar. And for myself, I found it easier to make all of the cookies first, and that way they would be all ready for when I was doing my other projects. But if you can't find air dry clay, you can go to Dollar Tree and find these cute little gingerbread men and women. They had boy and girl gingerbreads, I'm assuming because the girls had the bows. So you could literally use these like gingerbread cookies in your decorating, but I decided I wanted to have them all be pretty similar. So I removed all of the stickers that were on the gingerbread cookies, but I did leave the white because I did like that. And I just came back with some puffy paint and I painted over the eyes as well as the mouth of the cookie to make it have a similar appearance to my other cookies. Then I added some buttons down the front, and that is pretty much it. That is a very simple way to make gingerbread cookies. Now I want to make some plates to have my gingerbread cookies sit on. So I had these plastic plates that I found at a thrift store, and they do have plates like this at the Dollar Tree as well. Then I just took some scrapbooking paper and I just cut it down so that the paper would fit down into the center of the plate. I just continued around the scrapbooking paper until it would fit just in the center because I do want to paint the outside edge of the plate. And since it's Christmas, I want these for Christmas, so I'm going to be using a red paint. Now this red paint is by Decor and it's called Silk Paint, and it works really well. I did also give the outer edge a coat of Mod Podge so that it won't peel the paint off of my plate. And isn't that cute? Just like that, I have a plate of gingerbread cookies. And they also work really well as little extra decorations if you're going to be decorating a tiered tray. Lots of options with these gingerbread cookies. I'm sure you know that Dollar Tree has these wreath hangers, but I found one I really liked on Pottery Barn, so I wanted to see if I could make one similar to that. So I came back with the paint that I've been using, which is by Folk Art, for painting all of my gingerbread cookies. And I painted the wreath hanger with this acrylic paint. It did take 2 coats of the paint to really get it so you wouldn't see any of that original color that was the black of the wreath hanger. Next, I came back with a paint pen and I just drew some lines. Now you could do this with the puffy paint as well, but I was trying to go for something easy, so I just used a paint marker. I wanted it to look like the white was stitched onto the wreath hanger, and then I came back and just added some little dots in between all of the straight lines that I made on the hanger. And once that paint had time to dry, then I did give it a coat of Mod Podge. I found this really pretty fake gingerbread cookie at Hobby Lobby. It was $1.50, so it was just a tiny bit more expensive than the Dollar Tree. But I didn't like the red pieces. I guess they're supposed to be like red hot candies. So I came back with some puffy paint, and all of those little red spots, I covered them up with the puffy paint because I want this to look like a gingerbread cookie. I was really impressed with how well this puff paint worked. This paint is from the Dollar Tree. It only took 1 coat of this paint to cover up each of those little red berries on the ornament. I like that a lot better. Then I came back to my wreath hanger and I put a little bit of E6000 as well as some hot glue for the instant stick, and I secured the ornament to the wreath hanger. Now there is my Pottery Barn dupe for a gingerbread wreath hanger, and I really do like how this turned out. The wreath hanger paint is a little bit darker than the ornament, but I do like the difference in the color. Now I made these snowflake shapes using the air dry clay from earlier. Once the clay had hardened up a bit, I came back with some gingerbread color acrylic paint and I painted each of the snowflake cutouts. But just like my gingerbread cookies, I wanted the snowflakes to be a little bit darker, so I came back with a darker paint, which worked out really well because I do like that darker color. You can see the puff paint a little bit better. So after that paint had dried, I did come back with the puff paint and I just drew different designs onto the snowflake shapes. This is so much fun and it's so easy to do. I feel that this is a project that is very beginner friendly. You don't really have to have any skill. You could decorate them however you want them to be. And you know that they say that no two snowflakes are alike, so none of my snowflakes are exactly alike either. Lots of different patterns, but I really think these do look like snowflake cookies. Aren't they pretty? And then I put them onto one of those plates that I had made earlier, and I'm using them for decorating on a tiered tray that I have. Actually, it's like a tiered riser, more than a tiered tray. Now, this is the paint that I've been using for all of my projects. It's Nutmeg Brown. And I had these foam dice from the Dollar Tree, and I want to turn them into little gingerbread people. Now, I know other people have done this craft, but with these foam dice, it is so easy to make these gingerbread people. So I did 2 coats of the paint on each of the dice. Then I came back with the Dollar Tree puffy paint, and I painted that all around the top of each of the foam dice. For mine, I'm doing 3 dice, and I did end up using about 1.5 containers of the puffy paint. And once I had the paint dribbles going all the way around the dice, then I did come back and I filled in the center. One thing that's really fun with this puffy paint is it's puffy, so you can put it onto whatever you're painting and kind of lift it up, and it will make different levels of the paint on your project. For the gingerbread people, it really does look like frosting. And once I had the puffy paint on top of each of the dice, I came back with some sprinkles. I would recommend doing this when the paint is still wet because that will help the sprinkles stay in place on the top of your gingerbread person. You can sprinkle them wildly all across the top, or you can do what I'm doing and come back and be very deliberate of which sprinkle you're putting on your project. And once the puffy paint had dried, I came back with a black paint pen and I drew faces on each of my gingerbread characters. And you could use vinyl if that's what you have, or you could use paint. It really doesn't matter as long as you're happy with the faces that you make. Isn't that cute? It's so happy. Then I came back with a tiny bit of glue, and I'm actually using a Dollar Tree skewer, one of those wooden bamboo skewers, and I'm putting a little bit of glue onto the cheeks, and then I'm taking peppermint sprinkles and I'm going to use those as the cheeks for my gingerbread person. I repeated this process on each of the gingerbread dice that I had made. And then I came back and added some white to their eyes, at least the 2 that had open eyes. I think that just really elevates the look of these little gingerbread people. Next, I came back and used a red sprinkle for each of my gingerbread people's noses. And these are my gingerbread dice. I am so happy with how these turned out. They are so cute. They look so happy. And this project was definitely one of my favorites. I'm going to be making like a riser, and I'm just using 3 different pieces. So I've got this plate. I'm going to tip it upside down, just like that. Next, I'm going to take a Dollar Tree candlestick, and I'm going to secure that with E6000 to the center of the plate, and then I'm going to use a Dollar Tree cake pan on top. And once it's had time to dry, this is what it looks like. Again, I'm going to be using my Nutmeg Brown paint, and I'm going to paint this riser because I do want to use this in my decorating this year, which has a lot of gingerbread in it. And I thought it would look really nice to have a gingerbread colored riser. And it took 2 coats of the folk art paint to really make sure it was nice and covered. Now this has a matte finish, but if you wanted to make sure that it was going to stay, you could also put a coat of Mod Podge on it. And then you can just add in some extra things. I had lots of gingerbread cutouts left, and I added in some different size Christmas ornaments along with some little pieces of pine. And I just wanted to show you how easy it is to decorate for Christmas without getting very fancy or spending a lot of money. Now this is a very easy project. So I have this Dollar Tree picture, and I believe this is from Valentine's Day. And I actually bought this gingerbread print from Etsy. It comes in different sizes, and so I just found a size that would fit into my frame. And then using my paper cutter, I cut it down to the size that would fit into this Dollar Tree frame. Next, I used some craft glue on the back of it, and I put it into the frame. And then I used a scraping tool to scrape it down, and that project is done. That was so easy. And because that was so easy, I wanted to make a gingerbread house, so I did that with a website online, and using another Dollar Tree frame, I just cut out the top corners and I fit the picture into the picture frame. And just like that, I have some Christmas artwork for my decorating. Again, something so simple, you don't have to do a lot of work, and it's not very hard, and it does not take a lot of time. Now I decided I wanted to make a crate to hold some of the gingerbread cookies that I had made. So I took a Dollar Tree crate, then I took some tiny wood turnings and I glued those to the bottom. Next, I took that Deco Art silk red paint and I painted the crate with the red paint. And I was sure to get the inside edges of the crate as well. Then I came back with this fabric, and I thought it would look nice because it's green, so the green and the red go together for Christmas. And I cut off a piece of the fabric, and then I secured it into the crate with a little bit of hot glue. Next, I came back with some Dollar Tree floral foam, and I just secured a couple of the gingerbread cookies to the back. I don't want them to fall over, which is why I'm using just a little bit of hot glue. Then I put another piece of that fabric in to cover up the floral foam, and then I added in a couple more of the gingerbread cookies. Next, I came back with some jute twine, and I just tied it around the center of the crate and added a bow. That is pretty cute, just like it is. I just have to put my gingerbread cookies back in, but I did add a little bit more floral foam because I want to have my gingerbread cookies standing up. And this is what it looks like on the tiered riser that I have. I added in a couple of pine pieces, and I think it looks so cute. Now I got this in a Michael's grab bag, and originally it was $20, but I think I paid $5 for the grab bag. This had some raised wooden pieces, so I removed those, but it also had a really nice textured background, and I thought that would be perfect for what I want to use this for. So I used some white acrylic paint, and I covered up all of the wording on the inside of this picture. So this was actually for Easter, but it's going to be for Christmas now. It did take 2 coats of that acrylic paint, but once it was dry, then I decided I'm going to make a Christmas tree that's like bending over. So these greenery pieces are going to be the trunk of my tree. I did bend the top of it because I want this tree to look like it's bending over. Now, I've seen people do this with snowmen, but I've never seen anyone do it with gingerbread cookies. So the first thing I did was build the tree, and I just took random pieces of pine that I cut into smaller sections, and I put them all over that center trunk of my tree. And I found that it was easiest to do this by using the little pieces because I could get the shape of the tree that I wanted. Next, I came back with some of my gingerbread cookies and I pushed them off to the side of the picture to make it look like they're standing on top of each other, trying to reach the top of the tree. And I also took some remnants of different ribbon that I had, and I just had little pieces of it, but this is why I don't throw things like this away, because I know there are going to be projects that I can use them for. So I keep them in my craft stash, because even though this may not be enough ribbon for a large project, it's perfect for a smaller project like this one. So I just wound that ribbon all throughout the tree. Then I came back with some little ornaments. Now these are from Hobby Lobby and they are for the My Little Christmas Tree collection that they have. And I just took some of the red ornaments and I glued them onto my Christmas tree. But I wanted my tree to look like it had a trunk, so I went outside and I found some bark from trees and I took little pieces of bark and I just glued that to the bottom of my tree. Then I came back with a couple of candy canes. I wanted to make it look like a heart, so I took 2 candy canes and I glued them facing each other. And I added a few little gold beads into my tree as well to make it look like it had some more decorations. And I had a couple of gingerbread cookies left over, so I glued those to the top of the frame. And this is the finished project. I love how this turned out. This is so adorable. It is so cute, and it definitely makes me smile even now as I'm staring at my gingerbread men trying to put the star on top of their Christmas tree. One of these boards from the Dollar Tree and a chip brush and then some black paint. So this is just Dollar Tree acrylic black paint that I put onto the board directly, and then I'm going to add in a little bit of water because I don't want it to have a solid black background. I want to kind of water it out and make it look a little bit aged. So I'm just spreading the black paint onto the board and then mixing in the water as I work my way across my wooden canvas. And I like the chip brush because it does give a little bit of texture to it, and you can see the wood grain a little bit easier when you're painting it this way. And I did go ahead and paint all sides, so the top as well as each 4 sides that are going to be visible. And then I just let that dry for a little bit. And while it was drying, I used my Cricut machine and I found this really cool saying from the Polar Express. And I had some permanent vinyl that's kind of a metallic silver color. And I thought, how pretty would this be hanging up on the wall? So then I just weeded out my word saying, and there it is. Isn't that cute? So bright and shiny. And then using some transfer tape, I just put my phrase onto that. And then cut the transfer tape down to size. Now this is Frisco Crafts transfer tape, and this is by far my favorite. Then I just brought the whole transfer tape with my words over to my sign and positioned it how I wanted it to be. And then I just used this little tool to secure the vinyl to my sign, and then I carefully removed the transfer tape. I find that if you keep the transfer tape close to the project, it comes off a lot easier, and then you don't have to worry that your lettering is going to come off. Look at how pretty that is. And here it is hanging up on my wall. Seeing is believing, but sometimes the most real things in the world are the things we can't see. A quote from the Polar Express. For my next project, I got another of these canvases from Temu, and people seem to enjoy the last canvas that I made over, so I decided to do another one. I had this Merry Christmas sign from the Dollar Tree, and I went ahead and removed the hanger. I'm actually going to use those holes and the hanger, so this is perfect for this project. And see, this little canvas fits this just about perfectly. So then I just took some Dollar Tree wood glue and I put that all over the back of the sign, because the back is going to be where I'm going to adhere the canvas to. Then I just opened up the canvas and secured it in place. I did go over it a little bit just to make sure there's no bubbles or anything in that wood glue. And then I just put some heavy weighted objects on top of the canvas to keep everything in place while it was drying. And once it was dry, I took a Cricut weeding tool and I just punched out on the canvas where those holes were. And then using some wood beads, I put a bunch of them onto the hanger and then put the hanger back on my canvas. And it just slips right in, and just like that, I have a very, very festive Christmas piece to add to my decor. I really like how this turned out. It was so easy to do, and I think it's just really pretty. Now, I made this pillow a couple of years ago, and I found these awesome placemats at the Dollar Tree. And what makes these so nice is there's actually two parts to it. So there's a front and a back that have been stitched together. So guess what? This is a perfect pillow. I cut into the back of the placemat, being very careful not to cut the front of the placemat too. And then I just kind of peeled the back away from the front, being very careful not to rip any of the back of the placemat as well as the front. And then I just took my Christmas pillow from a couple of years ago and I stuffed it into the placemat. It's like a pillowcase now. And since it is a little bit larger than my original pillow, I did fold over the end and then just used hot glue to glue it in place. And I took another placemat and I did the same thing, but I don't have another pillow to put into this one, so I'm going to add some filling to make this placemat a pillow. So I went into the center of the back of the placemat, again being very careful not to pick up the front part of the placemat, and I just cut a slit into the back. I didn't go all the way end to end. I just needed to have a big enough space that I can put my hands in with the filling. And I had an old pillow that we weren't using anymore, so I just took the inside stuffing from that pillow and put it into the placemat. And once I had the pillow as full as I wanted it to be, and using some Dollar Tree wood glue, I glued that ribbon to the opening or the back side of my pillow. The Dollar Tree wood glue works really well for fabric, as well as wood. And it dries clear, so you won't be able to see the glue once it's all dry. And to secure it in place, I just folded the ribbon over on itself, and then I used some Dollar Tree clamps and just clamped the ends down to keep the ribbon in place while the glue was drying. Now, if you did this craft in the morning, you could have pillows ready for decorating by the afternoon. Isn't that pretty? And here are my pillows being used in my decorating. Oh my goodness, I love these. They turned out so cute. I was so happy to find these placemats at the Dollar Tree. They are perfect for Christmas. For this project, my husband had this PVC foam that he got for a project, and instead of throwing it away, I decided to put it to good use for a craft. I saw these really cute snowmen that look like they're made out of ceramic, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna try to make some snowmen with this PVC foam. So I opened 4 packages and just kind of rolled it around. And then I separated a smaller section from the larger section of the foam. And then I just formed them into balls. Now, this is really similar to the air dry clay, and it's very easily moldable. So I was able to make a larger ball, which will be the body of my snowman, and then a head. And I just put the head on top of the body and then set it off to dry. Then I did have some foam clay, so I just grabbed some of that and duplicated the process. Now this foam clay is exactly like that PVC stuff that my husband got for a project. So if you don't have this PVC stuff, I don't even know what it's called. The foam clay is awesome. And I didn't have any problems with cracking or anything as it dried. Now this project does take a couple of days because you need to let the clay or the PVC foam dry before you move on to the next step. And there's the head for my second snowman. And I just put the head on top of the body, and now I have these cute little snowmen. And I also needed to make some noses, so I cut a couple of pieces of that foam and just kind of worked it with my fingers, rolling it a little bit to make it the shape of a carrot nose. Then I just put everything off to dry. And once it was dry, I took some chalk paint, which I do keep in a Dollar Tree container because it's much easier to pour out. So yes, this is chalk paint. And I painted each of the snowmen. Now, to make this have a really smooth surface, I did add a little bit of water to the chalk paint because I don't want to see any brush strokes. I just want to see if I can make this look ceramic. And while my snowmen were drying, I took my little carrot noses, cut them down to size, and then painted them with some orange acrylic paint. And my Cricut weeding tool actually worked really well so that I could paint the foam and not worry about getting my fingers all covered in paint or having any of my fingerprints be in the nose. Now, once everything was dry, I took my little carrot noses and using some hot glue, I attached the carrot nose to the snowman. And I repeated the process for my second snowman. Then, using some Deco Art triple thick glaze, I gave each of the snowmen a nice thick coat of the glaze to really make them shiny. And here are my snowmen. Oh my goodness, these are so super cute. I have them in my kitchen right now, and I really like the way they turned out. I'm going to try to make these trees. These are beautiful, these berry trees, but they're also really expensive. So I have these cones. A couple are ones that I've had, and I did find this one at the Dollar Tree. So what I'm going to do is give this one a top because it's flat on the top. So I want to take this other cone and I'm going to cut the top off and I'm going to secure it to the top of the Dollar Tree cone. I just used a little bit of hot glue and secured the top of the other cone in place on this one. And I don't want to see the white of the cone, so I'm going to mix a couple of colors together that are reddish, burgundy-ish, and I'm also going to add in some baking soda to really give a little bit of texture to this paint. The baking soda will help it to stick to the cone a lot easier. So these two cones got a coat of that paint, and once they were dried, this is what they look like. And the red berries, I found them on Amazon. These are very hard to come by, it seems like, but I was able to find them, and I bought plenty to make sure I have enough for this craft. So I cut off individual branches that were on each of these bundles of the red berries. This is a little bit time consuming, but I did find that it's easier to have little sections of the berries when you're applying them to the cones. And then I just had to figure out where I was going to start. So without any rhyme or reason, I just picked up my glue gun and put some of the berries onto the cone. And I continued applying the berries all over the cone. I tried to use the larger sections when I could, but I did have to use some single berries. Now this is what it looks like when it's done. And this is the larger cone. Look at how much the smaller cone is, but this is the larger one. So I'm going to cover that one too. Then I had to have a base. So I had these flower pots. They're just terracotta flower pots. And I decided to use this green paint. I believe it's like a sagey green paint. It's just folk art, nothing fancy. And I painted each of the terracotta pots with the paint. And once they were dried, this is what they look like. And I used a little bit of E6000 on the top of the flower pots. I wouldn't recommend using hot glue because when you put hot glue next to a styrofoam cone, it will literally melt it. And then I just had to secure the flower pots to the bottom of my red berry trees. Now the Pottery Barn version of these trees, for the small ones, they're $99 a piece. But here's my version of the red berry trees. I think they turned out beautiful. I am so happy with them. And these were a lot more affordable to DIY. I was able to make these trees for around $6 a piece, but the time that I dedicated to these trees was totally worth it. Pottery Barn had this really adorable Christmas ornament with gingerbread men on a cookie sheet. And I thought, you know what, I can make that. So I've got these little paint containers that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I used some black and white acrylic paint to paint onto the paint tray. And then I added a little bit of baking soda to help the paint stick. And then I came back with a little gunmetal silver, I believe that's what this is called. And it's just a metallic silver gray paint that I painted on the top and the bottom of the paint tray. Now, when that was dry, I wasn't really happy with that color. It was a little too dark. So I came back with some silver paint and I painted over everything that I had already painted. And I used a pouncing motion of my paintbrush to add a little bit of texture to the texture that was already on the paint tray. And when it was dry, I found these adorable little gingerbread cookie shapes at Hobby Lobby. They're for my little Christmas tree. They are ornaments, but I just removed the ornament hanger and now it looks like I have tiny little gingerbread cookies. And then I determined how I was going to have my cookies be on the tray. And there were enough of these ornaments to give me 2 full cookie trays. Then I just used a little bit of hot glue and secured each of the gingerbread cookies into its respective tray. Then I used a little bit of baker's twine, and this baker's twine was red and white, and I made a loop and secured it to the back of the painter's tray, which is now a cookie sheet. Look at how cute these turned out. I am so happy. They are so pretty. Now, they may not look exactly like the Pottery Barn version, but the Pottery Barn version is really expensive. I was able to make 2 of these adorable cookie sheets with the cookies for $4. That was for both of the ornaments. Now, I love the beads that they have at Pottery Barn. They are so beautiful, but they're kind of expensive. So I wanted to see if I could make a bead strand, a giant bead strand, using these ornaments. I can't remember why I bought these ornaments, but I wasn't going to use them. So what I did was I removed the hanger of each of the ornaments. And then I used some silver paint that I actually got at Dollar Tree, and I painted all of the ornaments with 1 coat of the silver paint. And to have the ornaments be able to dry, I took a bamboo skewer and put it into some floral foam. Next, I came back with some Decor metallic paint and I just lightly brushed it across the ornaments. I was trying to get different shades of silver and metallic colors to each of the ornaments. Now, once all of that paint had dried, I came back with a little nipper and I nipped off the end of the ornament where the ornament hanger would have been, because I want this to look like a giant bead. I don't want it to look like a Christmas ornament. And to give it a little bit more dimension, I also wanted to apply some silver foil. Now, the silver foil, it's pretty fun to work with. It's like the gold foil, the gilding. First, you apply the adhesive to whatever it is that you're going to be gilding, and the glue goes on blue, and when it's dry, it's clear. That way you'll know when it's ready to be gilded. And I bought this gilding foil. It came with the brush, which I really like. So I think I'm going to save that for a paintbrush and use a little cheap brush in its place. And this gilding kit came with gold foil as well as the silver foil. And the silver is what I want to use for my ornaments. So all I had to do was literally put the ornament onto the foil, and because it has that foil adhesive on it, the silver gilding just sticks. And then I just wiped away any of the excess foil with the paintbrush. Now to make this a bead strand, I'm going to have another hole. So I used my hot glue gun on the opposite end of the ornament hanger part, and the tip of the hot glue gun is hot enough that it pushed through the ornament very easily. And I figured I want to try to give a little bit more dimension to these ornaments. So I started with some silver rub and buff, but that wasn't really doing anything. So then I used some antique gold, and that does give a little bit of definition to the ornaments and makes them look a little bit different. Now I found this really cool beading tool, which is so helpful when you're trying to get string to go through beads like this. This would have been really hard to do without this tool. So I just put the beading tool into the ornament, had it come out on the other end, added the twine, and then it was easy to get the bead strand started. And in between each of the ornaments, I tied a square knot. My goal was, again, to have this look like the Pottery Barn large bead strand, but mine just happens to be made out of Christmas ornaments. And once I had used all of the ornaments, I just cut the ends off of the twine that I was using to string them together. And I also wanted to show you, I did this with some painted beads. I got these on Amazon, but again, I used that beading tool to help make the process a lot easier. And I was able to get 6 beads onto the twine at each time because of the beading tool. And once I had used all of the silver beads that I had, I tied a square knot on one end. And then what I did was separate the beads a little bit because I want there to be a space in between. So I'm going to use that twine and I'm going to wrap it around in between each of the beads. I secured it down with a little bit of hot glue. And that is what it looks like. I thought it looked pretty cool. Now you'll notice there's tassels on the end of this bead strand. So let me show you how easy it is to make a tassel. I used some of the same twine that I had, and I wrapped it around my hand and then just cut one end off. Next, I took a smaller piece of that twine and tied it about an inch down from the top. I used a little bit of hot glue to secure everything in place. Now I also wanted to have it be really wavy on the bottom, so I unwound each of the strands of the twine, which had 3 separate strands. This is how I was able to give it that wavy look. So then I just have to use the hot glue and I can attach it to my ornament strand. I have had my eye on this tray at Pottery Barn for so long, and I almost went and bought it, but I wanted to see if I could DIY it. So I found this tray at Target, and it's wood. It's similar to the other tray. So I sanded down all of the rough edges, and then I used some black spray paint to start a base coat for this tray. Next, I came back with some metallic silver paint and painted over the entire tray. And the black doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be completely coated. I was trying to give it a little bit of definition with the spray paint to have it mimic the Pottery Barn tray. And if you don't have a wood tray, you can use a plastic one like this one. I got it Hobby Lobby. So again, I started with the black spray paint, and on this one, I did give it a pretty thick coat of the black paint so that it was completely coated. I did the bottom as well as the inside of the tray. And when that was dry, I did come back with that same silver metallic paint. And made sure everything was covered. Now here are some of those projects that I just showed you how to DIY. This is the bead strand, the tiny beads. Here are the larger beads, and they're sitting in that wooden tray. The ornaments actually do look pretty good. Now I saw this holiday floral arrangement and I knew I needed to make this. I just had to make this. Now I had already made this from some Dollar Tree supplies for another project that I just didn't use, and I thought it would be perfect for this floral arrangement. So I cut some pieces of floral foam and secured that to the inside of the tray. Then I had this pine evergreen, I guess this is like a garland, so I just cut off pieces of it and glued it to the floral foam. I worked my way all the way around until you couldn't see the inside of the bowl anymore. And I also had these left over from another project. These are just some different pine pieces. So I secured those in between the original evergreen branches that I had. Then I found these beautiful amaryllis silk flowers on Amazon, and there are actually 4 flowers all gathered up together. And I decided it would be better to use these individually, and then I could just secure them in with some hot glue. This will really give me a much bigger bang for my buck. And this is the end result. I am so happy with how this turned out. I was able to make this piece for about $25, which is a lot more affordable when I compare it to the Pottery Barn version, which was $170. It's so beautiful, and I am so glad I did this. Now, I love these gold candlesticks from Pottery Barn, but I had a bunch of black candle holders from the Dollar Tree and a couple that I found at thrift stores, and I had a lot of extra metallic goldish paints. So I just spray painted all of the candle holders. And by using the leftover spray paint that I had, this was a very affordable project. And I really like the color that I got from combining the 3 different spray paints. I used my new candle holders to create a centerpiece for my dining room table. I also used the extras that I had from other projects of the greenery and then just found some pine cones. And I was able to make all of these candlesticks for around $10. Now, when I saw this Christmas tree at Pottery Barn, I really wanted to see if I could dupe this. So I took a Dollar Tree Christmas tree and fluffed it up just a little bit just to see what I was working with. And it was like, no, I need more. So I did grab another Dollar Tree Christmas tree and I just cut all of the branches off. I know that might sound a little crazy, but I really wanted to get the look of the Pottery Barn tree. And for $2.50, I thought it was worth it to cut the branches off of the Dollar Tree tree. And I literally wrapped jute twine around the trunk of the Dollar Tree tree. I just used hot glue to secure it in place because I want it to look a little sparse in different sections. Then I came back with the branches from the donor tree and I used hot glue to secure the branches in place to make this Dollar Tree tree look a little bit fuller. I started at the bottom of the tree and I worked my way up. Look at how cute that is. It definitely has the look of the Pottery Barn tree, I think. And even if it isn't perfect, once you do the styling like I've done here, it looks a lot better. So this adorable little tree was $2.50 versus the Pottery Barn version, which was $79. I think this one looks just as nice. Now, I love the Pottery Barn pillows, but they are so expensive. This is almost $60 for one pillowcase. I found these pillowcases on Amazon and it was $12.67 for two. And then there's this little snowman pillow. Isn't he so cute? He's around $30 on Amazon right now, or you can go with the Pottery Barn version and spend $80. And speaking of snowmen, oh my gosh, look at this Terracotta Snowman at Pottery Barn. And I was so excited when I went to Target and I found this acrylic snowman. Oh my gosh, this is so perfect for my Terracotta Snowman. So I used the hot glue gun to punch out through that acrylic plastic to mark where the snowman's eyes are going to be. As well as his mouth and even the buttons down the front. This part does take a little bit of time. You have to be patient if you're going to be doing this, but it will be worth it. Once I was done with that part, I came back with some acrylic paint and I added in some baking soda. The baking soda is awesome for helping the paint stick to plastic like this. And I think you can see I also cut a cardboard circle and secured that to the top of the snowman's hat. Now, I'm using a Dremel and I don't know, I think this is used to cut metal, but this was the best thing that I could find to get the bottom out of the acrylic snowman. If you're going to be doing this, be sure to wear safety glasses and be very careful when you're doing this so you don't have that plastic flying towards your face. And I just did little bits at a time and I had the Dremel set at a speed of about 6. I didn't want to go too fast and the Dremel was good because it helped me to keep control of what I was doing when I punched out that acrylic bottom. So now I can put a candle into my snowman. I had some air dry clay and I basically made a donut and I secured that to the snowman. Then I also used the same air dry clay to give him a nose. And I lightened up the snowman using some acrylic paint that I again had added baking soda to. And to give it that terracotta look like the Pottery Barn snowman, I did fleck on a little bit of burnt umber paint and look at the snowman. Oh my goodness, this turned out so good. I'm so happy with this snowman. I think it looks adorable and I liked it so much I had to make another one. These snowmen cost me about $5 a piece to make, which is a lot more affordable than the Pottery Barn version at $149 for one snowman. No, this doesn't look exactly like the Pottery Barn Terracotta Snowman, but I think it looks great and I am so happy that I did it. So I found this picture frame at Dollar Tree. I haven't seen these very often, but this was the perfect size of frame for the craft I want to do. This tile from Dollar Tree almost is exactly the same size. It wasn't quite, so I did have to cut it down just a little bit. Now it does have a self-sticking backing, so I attached it to the cardboard, which is the back of the frame, and then I cut it down to size, and then to make sure that it was going to stay in place, I did use a little bit of Dollar Tree wood glue. And then I just smoothed that glue down. Then I came back with some burnt umber paint and I painted the entire tile with the burnt umber paint. And once that had dried, I came back with some folk art chalk paint, and this is in white, and I painted the entire tile with the white paint because I did this backwards. I wanted to have the white be the background and then the burnt umber be the accent. So I went ahead and painted everything with the white chalk paint. Next, I came back with a smaller paintbrush and I applied a little bit of the burnt umber onto all of the raised accents of the tile. These tiles are so much fun to craft with. I'm sure you've seen other people use them, but there's so many things that you can do with these tiles, especially during Christmas. And once I was finished doing a little bit of accents on the raised portions of the tile, I came back with a chip brush and I lightly coated the entire tile. I had these pine branches that were left over from last Christmas, so I just cut off little individual branches of the pine, and I'm going to make this a wreath. So I took those individual branches and just hot glued them onto the tile in a circle pattern. So this is going to be the beginning of my wreath. I did come back with some extra branches to make my wreath a little bit fuller and a little bit thicker. I wasn't worried if it was perfect. Sometimes I think it looks better if there's a little bit of variation. I don't want a perfectly round wreath. And I wanted it to look like it had freshly snowed on my wreath, so I painted the wreath with a little bit of white chalk paint. Next, I made a more primitive or rustic style bow, and I glued that to the top center of my wreath. I did come back with some extra loops of that ribbon just to make my bow a little bit fuller. So even if you're not perfect with making these bows, all you have to do is add a few more loops to the bow. Then I had these jingle bells from Hobby Lobby from last Christmas. They have a rusty appearance to them, so I didn't have to enhance them at all. And I tied a jingle bell to a piece of jute twine, and then I took another jingle bell and did the same thing. Next, I took both of those pieces of jute twine and tied them together so my jingle bells are connected. And then I used a little bit of hot glue to secure the jingle bells right underneath the bow. And for the finishing touch, I added a small pine cone. Now, I didn't show you, but I did paint the frame of the picture. And once everything was dry, I just put the picture frame back on top and secured it to the back. And look at that. This is so pretty and it was so easy to make. I love how you can see the raised pattern of the tile on the backing of this. I think it's so pretty. For this project, I took a package of the bamboo skewers and one of the cutting boards that you hang up that has all the writing all over it, but I want this to be more like a cutting board. So I started by putting some wood glue all over the cutting board, and I only put the glue about a quarter of the way up. Then I started securing the bamboo skewers to the cutting board. Now, at first I started by just doing 1 or 2 skewers at a time. But as I worked with this, I found it easier to do multiples of the skewers because that kind of helps to keep everything in line as I was going up the cutting board. And even if some of that wood glue gets onto the front of the skewers, it really won't matter unless you're staining this. For my cutting board, I'm going to just be using burnt umber paint. That's like my favorite paint for crafting. So it doesn't really matter if the wood glue gets onto the front of the skewers. I worked my way all the way up to the top of the cutting board. And then I cut pieces of the skewers so that they were smaller right at the top. I didn't worry about the hole. I went ahead and covered that up. And then I allowed this to dry overnight. Now, what I didn't show you was I took it out into my garage and I cut it with my scroll saw. But if you don't have a scroll saw, you could use a jigsaw as well. And once everything was cut and sanded so the edges are all smooth, then I came back with some burnt umber paint and some water. So I just painted the entire cutting board with the burnt umber paint, and the water really helps to give different shades or different levels of lightness and darkness to the cutting board so it doesn't all look the same. If I wanted it a little bit lighter, I just added a little bit more water. And if I wanted it a little bit darker, I just added a little bit more paint. This was pretty much my cutting board. So I came back with some ribbon to make a bow, and I just secured that to the top section of the cutting board. And I do like that, but it does need a little bit of something extra. And I found this beaded garland at Walmart and I really liked it. So what I decided I wanted to do was make a bead strand, like a farmhouse bead strand. So I cut it down to the size that I wanted it to be, and then I added some tassels to the ends. And look at that, now I have a very pretty bead strand that I can use for my holiday decorating. And I did decide to go ahead and add some greenery just to the top of the cutting board because I like to add greenery to everything. You don't necessarily have to do that, but I think it gives it just a little bit of something extra. And now I can take my Christmas bead strand and just drape it around the cutting board. And here is the finished project. This is the cutting board along with the bead strand. And I don't know about you, but I love working smarter and not harder. So finding small beaded garland like this and turning it into a strand of beads for Christmas, to me, that is a genius and simple idea that anyone can do. Now for this project, I have a Dollar Tree votive holder, and what I've been doing is wrapping yarn all the way around it. And I'm going to make a Christmas tree with this. And I had this yarn from Hobby Lobby that I've had forever, and I really just wanted to use it up. So I thought it would be fun to cover up a votive holder and basically turn this into a container to hold a Christmas tree. And I just worked my way all the way around the votive holder with my glue gun and the yarn. And I made sure to cover up the top edge of the votive holder as well. I don't want to see any of that coming through. I just want to see that yarn.
Let's go outside. The snow is falling down and every child is having so much fun. The snowman is twice the size as me with the smile.
Then I came back with some floral foam. I think this is like a dry foam. This stuff is really fun to work with. And I cut it down to the size it needed to be to fit inside of the votive holder.
Get all the Christmas songs that we love.
Then I took more of those pine branches and I just stuck them inside of it. So my idea is to make this look like a little Christmas tree. I wanted to keep this simple, so I didn't add any ornaments or anything like that, but I could see where that would be really pretty too. If you added some ornaments, maybe a star, even some lights to the tree itself, I think it would be really pretty. But I wanted simple, so mine is just a simple Christmas tree. And I just kept adding extra pieces of the branches onto the tree. I added some to the base as well to make it look a little bit fuller at the bottom. I don't want it to look like pine branches that have just been shoved down into foam. I wanted to give it a little bit of a shape so that it looks like this was intentional. Next, I found some really pretty paper. This is literally just paper that had a fun pattern on it. So I cut a wavy edge all the way around it. And then I used a snowflake sticker that I got from Hobby Lobby in this big book of stickers. And what I'm going to do is fold that over and secure it with hot glue so that it looks like it's a tag for the bottom of my Christmas tree. And this was so easy, and I think it looks really nice. It's very simple, and this is something you could definitely do multiple times with different colors of yarn or even different styles of Christmas trees. Now, I know you guys have seen this, but this is my first time ever doing it. I have always wanted to do the Epsom salt and put that onto glass. So what I did was I took Epsom salt from the Dollar Tree, and then I took some iridescent glitter and I mixed that together because I want to have a little bit of bling or sparkle with my fake snow. And I just blended that together into a big mason jar. Then I took a large mason jar that I got from Dollar Tree and I painted it with Mod Podge. And then I just sprinkled my glitter and Epsom salt concoction onto the jar. I did pat it down a little bit because I really want to make sure that that Epsom salt and the glitter is going to stick to the jar. I also wanted to make sure that the Epsom salt mixture was all the way around to the bottom, so that's why I dipped the jar into the Epsom salt mixture. You can definitely see the glitter in with the Epsom salt. I also did it with a smaller mason jar as well. Then I took the same ribbon that I used for my cutting board and I glued that around the top edge of the jars. I don't want to see the threads of the jar top. That's why I decided to use the ribbon. And once I had that ribbon attached, then I just took some jute twine and tied it around the neck of the jar. And I made a jute bow that I could put onto the little knot that I had created. And to finish it up, I took a tiny little pine cone and I just secured that with hot glue right underneath the center of the bow. I also found these really cute, tiny little pine cones with some red pip berries, and I individually glued a couple of those snow-covered pine cones right above the larger pine cone. I thought it would look pretty with those red berries, so I put a couple of red berries on as well. And here are my beautiful, beautiful candle holders. Aren't they pretty? Now the small one was too small to have the tea light candle go in, so I just tipped it upside down and put it on top. But I think they turned out really pretty. If you haven't tried these yet, you've got to try it. It is such an easy but beautiful decoration. Now I found this mason jar. It's like a tiny mason jar at Dollar Tree. And then I found these peppermint candies at Hobby Lobby, which are 50% off. So I think they were around $1.50. But what I want to do is just take these peppermints and I want to make my mason jar look like it's full of peppermint candies. So I cut off all of those individual little peppermints and I cut off the ends where it was hanging on that ornament. And then I just tucked them into the mason jar. Then I came back with some red ribbon. This was wire edged ribbon, but I didn't need it to be wire edged. And I folded it in half and then I hot glued it so that it's going to be half the size. Then I secured that ribbon to the top edge of the lid of the jar. Like the other crafts that I've been sharing with you, this is a really easy and simple decoration idea that you can make using stuff that you find very affordably at Dollar Tree as well as Hobby Lobby. And speaking of Hobby Lobby, I found these awesome ornaments. I think they're window clings, but I really liked this one and I like the pattern, but it's too large for my lid of my mason jar. So what I did was just measured it and cut it down so that it would fit on the top of the mason jar. And I used a little bit of wood glue just to secure it to the top. And then I used a little bit more ribbon right around the top of the ribbon that I had already placed on because I wanted it to have something a little bit extra. And I really like how it turned out too. Now on my last trip to Dollar Tree, they had some really awesome games and they were in wood boxes. I didn't want it for the game, I wanted it for the box. So I painted the box red and then I came back with some red paint that has a little bit more shine to it. And I just did one coat of that over top of the red paint that was already on the box. And I found this really pretty ornament at Walmart. It was $1.96, I believe. And I just took out the hanger on the top and used a little bit of hot glue to secure it to the wood box. There you go. How easy was that? I also made a smaller bead strand that could either go onto this or just sit in front of it. I really like how simple this sign was to make. I think it's really pretty and it was so easy. We are going to make some spoons filled with frosting. And I got these spoons on Amazon. They're just wooden spoons. Aren't they cute? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stain them first using some Folk Art dark wax. Now this stuff works really good for staining, but if you wanted to have, say, white spoons, you could do that as well. Or any color really, you could just water down the paint and then do the same process that I'm doing to get different colored spoons. And I will have to do that in an upcoming video because I have so many of these spoons, I'm going to have to play around with them. But once I've got the wax onto the spoon, then I just wipe it off, just like that. And here are my spoons all dried, and I'm going to be using these faux sprinkles. I got these on Amazon. And also these pre-done bows and some puffy paint, some puffy white paint. Now this puffy white paint I got on Amazon, but you can find it at the Dollar Tree and I have used it and it works really well. But I'm just going to fill in the spoon with the frosting or my puffy paint. And what's fun with this puffy paint is it does give some texture to whatever you are using it on. And then I'm going to take some of those faux sprinkles and I'm going to put those on top of that frosting or puffy paint. And then I'm just going to repeat the process with the remaining spoons that I've already stained. And once the spoons were dry, I took my hot glue gun and then I took the bows and I attached a bow to each of the spoons. I like these bows because they're already pre-tied and they're pretty much uniform in shape and dimension. Not something I could do myself, so that was why I opted to buy the pre-done bows. And here is the finished project, a bunch of wooden spoons with frosting on them sitting on my tiered tray in my kitchen. They turned out so cute, and I just put them into a tiny little red mug that I got at Hobby Lobby, of course when it was on sale. And I'm sure you've seen this before, but I'm gonna make some hot cocoa shooter cups. These are so much fun. So I just took some of these little parfait cups from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to put in some brown paint. Now, depending on what kind of flavor of drink you want, you can change this up. But I want my little parfait cups to look like hot cocoa. So I'm using brown paint and I'm just going to brush that paint on the inside of the cup. Now it does take a couple of layers of paint to make sure you have everything covered and coated evenly. But by painting the inside of the plastic parfait cup, then you still have the shine from the plastic on the outside. This is why I like to do it this way. And once my parfait cups were dry, I took a piece of cardboard and I just traced around the top of the cup. This is going to fit down inside the cup so I can have a place for my whipped cream to start without filling up the entire parfait cup. That would be a waste of material. Then I just used a Cricut tool just to push this down in and make sure I have it the right size for the cup. And then using the same brown paint and using my Cricut tool, I just painted all surfaces of that little cardboard disc. And once my discs were dry, then it was safe to push them down into the parfait cups. And I just pushed them down so that they were even with where the brown paint was. And I left a portion of the parfait cups clear because I want to see the whipped cream inside the cup as well. And I'm going to be using some lightweight spackle for the whipped cream. So even though this was a little bit dried out, that's okay because I'm going to add in a little bit of white paint to really make this really bright white. So I'm just putting the spackling into a little cup. And then I'm just going to mix everything together. Like I said, I did put a little bit of acrylic white paint into this spackle mixture to make it a little bit smoother. The more you add to it, the more runny your spackle is going to be. So just do a little bit if you're going to be doing this project. And once I was happy with my whipped cream, I put it into a piping bag. And I don't remember which frosting tip I had on this piping bag, but I just piped the whipped cream, or the spackle, onto the top of each of my parfait cups. Like that. And those little cardboard discs really do make a difference because you don't have to use a lot of the spackling material. You're just filling up wherever the cup is clear. Then I'm going to top it off with some faux sprinkles again. And the spackling is not quite as sticky as the puffy paint, so I did use a tweezers to kind of help the process out. And next I took some paper straws that are in Christmas colors, and I cut them shorter and then pushed them down into the whipped cream. And if you don't have the faux sprinkles, you can use cinnamon too. That makes a really great garnish for these little hot cocoa cups. I did have some iridescent glitter, so I put that on top too because I really like the sparkly glitter look for the holiday season. And here are my cute little hot cocoa shooters. Oh my goodness, I think they're so cute. I made some little treats too, but the hot cocoa shooters are very easy to make and so adorable on a tiered tray. Now I found this really fun Christmas ornament at Walmart for $1.98. And it comes with 5 of these little balls on it. And I thought it would be really fun to turn this into cake pops. This is such an easy craft. All I did was take off each of those individual little pieces and then I attached some gold stick. So the gold sticks are going to be the base of the cake pop. And I cut the gold sticks down to different sizes so that my cake pops will not all be exactly the same size. And I found these gold sticks at Walmart when I bought this Christmas ornament. So I'm just going to remove that wire in the center. And then I'm going to insert one of the gold sticks into the place where I removed the wire. And I'm just repeating that process with all of my cake pops. Look at how easy that is, and doesn't it look so real? And then I just took the cake pops and put them into a glass jar that I had. I believe I got this from Hobby Lobby, but just like that, we've got a project done. This would be great for a tiered tray or anywhere that you wanted to add something like this for your decorating. All right, now I know I showed this to you in an earlier video, but I'm going to show you how easy it is to make some fake marshmallows for your decorating. So I'm starting off with some air dry clay. This is by Crayola. And yes, there will be links in the description box below, but I'm just going to roll out some of this clay. And then I'm going to cut it down to the size that I want it to be for my marshmallows. Now these won't be exactly perfect when I'm first cutting them, but once I get the shapes of the marshmallows cut out to the size that they're going to be, then I'm just going to manipulate that clay a little bit with my fingers and roll it out and smush it down a little bit so that it will really look like marshmallows. I'm going to use these marshmallows for a lot of the crafts that I'm showing you how to do today. So you can have big marshmallows, medium-sized marshmallows, or even little tiny small marshmallows. And it doesn't matter what size you make these marshmallows. So even the really big ones, they still hold their shape and no cracking, no splitting, and they look fantastic when they're done. So if you want to do fake bakes for your crafts, you can easily with this air dry clay. Now, if you don't have air dry clay, Dollar Tree does have these wooden cubes. They're almost like the little dice that I've used in the past, but you can use those as well. And the marshmallows are super easy to paint, and this is what they look like when they're dry. And being prepared and having a lot of different size marshmallows will definitely make it easier for you when you're doing a lot of crafts. So for this craft, I have these plastic spoons that came in a set with like a teapot. I painted them with the nutmeg brown color by Apple Barrel, I believe, and it did take 2 coats, but once it was dry, then I did put a coat of Mod Podge on each of the spoons. I made sure to do the front, the back, the sides, everywhere, because these spoons are plastic, and if you don't coat them with something, the paint will peel off. Now, if you don't have plastic spoons, you can also use wooden spoons like these. And then some sprinkles. So what I'm going to do is use some brown hot glue, and I'm going to fill the spoons with this hot glue. And this hot glue looks so much like hot fudge. It is incredible. And I got a little bit excited at first because of how good it looked. So I didn't put the sprinkles on when the hot glue was still hot. So I did have to use a little bit more hot glue to make sure that the sprinkles would stick in place on the spoons. And you can see I added in some of my marshmallows to this spoon and then just different sprinkles. Now these sprinkles, I did get them on Amazon. They're very affordable, and as you can see, you get a lot of sprinkles. I find that it's easier to put the sprinkles onto something larger like a plate or even this painter's tray. It works so well for the sprinkles, and you can separate them out if you want to. And once I was happy with the sprinkles on my spoons, I added bows to the spoons, and now I have a really pretty addition for my tiered tray that definitely looks like hot fudge resting on some spoons. Now for this craft, I'm going to use this Dollar Tree mug, along with some dessert cups that I got at Dollar Tree. I love doing these fake bakes, whatever you want to call them, but using things that you get at the Dollar Tree, you can make these very affordably. So I'm going to use burnt umber paint because I want my hot cocoa to have a really dark look to it. So I just dumped some burnt umber paint into the mug, and then I just spread it around inside. By doing this on the inside of the mug, you'll get a nice shine because of the glass. And I was very careful and brought the paint all the way up to the edge of the mug. I repeated the process on these little dessert cups. I don't know if they're really dessert cups. I think they're parfait cups that I got from Dollar Tree, and they came in a pack of 6. But again, that clear plastic really gives a nice shine to the burnt umber paint on the inside of the cup. And I wanted to try and use some Dollar Tree caulking as the whipping cream. So I attached a frosting tip to the caulking itself using some hot glue. And I also had some brown hot glue sticks, and I cut out cardboard and put on each of the tops of my hot cocoa cups. This was a lot easier than trying to push them down inside, so I'm not going to have the whipped cream that looks like it's coming down on the inside of the cup, but this will work just as well. Then what I did was take the brown hot glue and just go around the outer edge of the cardboard circle that I had cut out. This way it will cover up that edge of the cardboard and it'll look like it's hot fudge dripping down the sides of the glass. And I repeated this process on all 3 of the glasses that I had made. Then I took one of those channel keys and I put it around the top of the caulking to make it easier to get the caulking out of that tube. Then I just squeezed the caulking onto the top of each of the hot cocoa cups that I was making. And the caulking does look like whipped cream, but one thing that I did notice is it's pretty heavy and the peaks of the whipping cream don't stay nice and tall like they do on something else that I'm going to show you in just a minute. But if you don't have the options of using anything else for fake whipped cream on your projects like this, the Dollar Tree caulking in the tube does work pretty well. And I wanted it to look like there was hot fudge dripping down the top of my whipped cream, so I took that brown hot glue stick again and just put it over top of the caulking. I did this on both of the little parfait cups that I had from the Dollar Tree. They definitely do look like nice fancy little desserts, don't they? Then I came back and added a little bit more of the hot fudge topping down from the top of the whipped cream, dripping down on the sides of the glass. And for the finishing touch, I did add a little bit of iridescent glitter. This glitter is so pretty on these little fake hot cocoa cups. I also cut down a couple of straws and put those into the whipping cream while it was still wet. And then I added a little bit more of the hot fudge topping, also known as brown hot glue, to really make sure that the straws are in place on the whipped cream. Now on the larger hot cocoa mug, I did start off by using some of that caulking just basically around the sides and the edges. I do want this to have more of a whipped cream appearance, but getting this project started with a little bit of that caulking on the edges was a really good way to start. But I want the whipped cream to be a lot taller, so I took a styrofoam ball and I cut it in half. And I used a little bit more hot glue to secure it in place in the center of the mug. And then I used more of the Dollar Tree caulking just to kind of fill in the edges, because the caulking is a lot less expensive than the spackling that I'm going to be using. And I'm almost out of the caulking, so I did go ahead and use the rest of it on my mug. And once I was out of the caulking, then what I did was came back with a frosting bag and a new tip. So I just cut the end off of the frosting bag, and I've already got the frosting tip in there. Then I push it down to the base of the bag. Next, I took a jar and put the frosting bag inside. Then I took the Fast and Final spackling, which is so lightweight, and I filled the frosting bag with the spackle. This is by far the best way to make fake whipped cream that I have found so far. You don't have to add any paint. It comes out looking nice and bright white, and it's super easy to work with, even in these plastic bags. And when the bag was filled up with the whipped cream, I simply twisted it, and then it was ready to go. So I came back to my hot cocoa mug and I started to add the whipped cream. And I don't know which frosting tip I was using for this. I just really liked it. I think it was some sort of a star. So I basically made little stars of whipped cream all along the top of my hot cocoa mug. And I just turned the mug so that I could get to a new side or a side that needed whipped cream added. And once I was done, this is what my fake whipped cream looks like. I think it's so pretty. But I do want to add some topping, so I'm going to put a couple of straws that I've cut down into the whipped cream. And now I'm going to add some more of those little mini marshmallows that I made earlier. I was trying to think about what I would put on my cup of hot cocoa, and marshmallows are definitely something that I would add. And this is how the large cup of hot cocoa turned out. I think this is so pretty. I am so happy how it turned out, and I love adding things like this to the decor that I'm using for Christmas. You can make your hot cocoa topper anything you wanted it to be. You can add sprinkles, you can add cinnamon, you can add fake chocolate pieces. Whatever your theme is for your decorating, you can add those pieces to the top of your hot cocoa. Now to go along with my hot cocoa mugs, I'm going to be using these teapots. I've got a plastic one and I've also got a ceramic one. The first thing I did was paint them with red paint. I also took a plastic plate and that's going to go on the bottom of my teapot. And I had 2 teapots that I did this with, so I repeated the process and put a red plate on the bottom of the other teapot. Then to fill in the top, I used cardboard and cut it down so that it would match the size of the teapot. And I secured it in place with hot glue. And I'm going to be adding whipped cream, so I'm going to cut down a couple of these styrofoam balls that I got from Dollar Tree and attach them to the teapot. And once I had the styrofoam ball in place, then I started putting the brown hot glue around the edge of the cardboard circle. And I did this in small sections. Then I came back with some sprinkles and added sprinkles to the hot glue. I find that it's easier by working in small sections with this hot glue because I don't want it to get solid before I put the sprinkles on. That is one big tip that I can offer to you if you're going to be doing this project, is do the hot glue in small sections, then attach the sprinkles, and then move on to the next section. Now I also wanted it to look like there was hot fudge dripping out of the spout of the teapot, so I added some hot glue to the spout. And I also added some to the plate. So it looks like the hot fudge is just dripping down all over. And by adding a little bit of sprinkles, I think this really helps. Then it was time for the whipped cream. So I came back with the Fast and Final spackling and I put that all around the top of the styrofoam ball that's on the top of my teapot. And I wasn't too happy with having it just like one solid line, so I did come back and kind of rough up the spackling a little bit. Then I added some fake peppermint candies, along with some chocolate sprinkles, and some fake chocolate. That is so cute. And for this teapot, I did also want to add some extra embellishments, so I cut down sections of ribbon and added a bow. And I also attached a tag that I had cut out just on regular paper that says hot cocoa. I used Mod Podge to secure it in place on the teapot. Then I came back with more of the brown hot glue and I just put a little bit of hot glue all the way around the edge of the hot cocoa tag. And I decided to add a little bit more of that hot glue to some peppermints that are on the plate and then a few sprinkles. I love how that turned out. But I wanted to have a small coffee cup or hot cocoa cup that matched and went along with my teapot. So I did the same process of painting a plastic teacup red. Then I added a styrofoam ball. Then I did the whipped cream, the hot fudge topping, and a little bit of glitter. And now I have a cup of hot cocoa next to my hot cocoa teapot. This is so cute. I love how this turned out. I loved it so much I had to do a couple of these teapots because it was such a fun craft to do. And since my crafts are getting bigger, I thought it would be fun to repeat that process on these rain boots. These are so cute. So for the larger one, I just removed all of the embellishments. The little one is ceramic, so it didn't have any. And I'm going to be using this Deco Art Silk paint in red. This stuff is so nice for projects like this. And I'm just going to paint each of these rain boots. I did end up using 2 coats of this paint on each rain boot because I really want to make sure I have a nice solid red base to the boots. Once I was done with the larger one, then I repeated the process with the smaller one. Now I've never done anything like this before, so I'm going to use the smaller rain boot as my test project. So I did the same process like I have been doing, and I put that brown hot glue. I dripped that down around the top edge of the boot. Then I took a little piece of cardboard that I had cut out, put that in place. Then using the brown hot glue again, I just dripped down onto the side so it's covering the sides of the cardboard, and it's also looking like hot fudge that's dripping out of the boot. And I even made it look like a drip of hot fudge on the front of the boot. Then I came back with the whipped cream and went around the top. And I didn't have a small enough styrofoam ball, so I did use a pumpkin that I had cut in half to be the filler for the top of the boot. I added in some fake chocolate and a couple of straws and some peppermint sprinkles. And I was really happy with how that process went, so I felt more confident going on to the larger boot. I did exactly the same thing, but since this is a larger piece, I did do the brown hot glue in small sections and attach some sprinkles. When I was happy with what it looked like, then I moved on to another section of the boot and added more sprinkles. I did the same thing on the front of the boot where I added some hot fudge and some more sprinkles. And after putting a styrofoam ball on the top, then I came back with the Fast and Final spackling and added whipped cream to the top of the boot. If you've never tried something like this, I really encourage you to try it because this was such a fun project. Then I added some straws and some sprinkles along with my little fake marshmallows to the top of the boot. Next, I came back with that brown hot glue to make it look like hot fudge drizzling down from the top of the whipped cream. Look at how adorable that is. I wanted to add a tag, so I cut out that same hot cocoa tag that I had used on an earlier project, and I secured that in place with some hot glue. And then I used some more sprinkles to act like they are holding that little hot cocoa sign in place in the whipped cream on the top of the boot. Like I said, this project was so much fun. I am so happy with how these rain boots turned out. They are so cute, and these are definitely something new, something different to add to my tiered tray decor, along with all of the other hot fudge pieces that I'm using this year for my decorating. This is something new of using this tiered stand with all of these different type of projects. And if you've enjoyed this video and these projects, go ahead, click that subscribe button and click the bell notification so you'll get an alert every time I have a new video coming out. If you're looking for crafts for your Christmas decorating this year, I've got you covered, and I've got a lot more projects to come. So until next time, happy crafting!